Hello and welcome to today's talk time. My name's Meredith McCarthy, and I am passionate about hypnotherapy and what it can do to help people just like you to live their lives in a better way, in a more empowered way, in a positive, buoyant way. One of the things that I want to talk about is the idea of feeling broken and a bit about my journey, about what happened to me and the aha moment that helped me to find the career path that I'm in. So buckle up. I hope you enjoy today's talk time. Right. Years ago, I was adopted, but I didn't know I was adopted until I was actually 16 years old. And that was kind of a big shock to me. But because of the other experiences that I'd had, suddenly a whole lot of things started to make sense. Now, I did not know I was adopted because we had a bit of a tragedy in our family, and I was being raised by two loving humans, and they were very desperate to have children. My mum had 7 miscarriages, and then finally she was blessed with a baby boy, and his name was Brendan. When I was born, my birth mother was not able to keep me, so she put me up for adoption. She had already understood the journey of adoption. She'd already adopted out her firstborn, so I was her secondborn, and she was also adopted herself, so raised by other people other than her natural family. So she did the best she could for me. Anyway, my mum, because she had such a big problem with having babies and things like that, they decided to adopt me. So I was ushered in, and my brother and we went off to live in Fiji. So my father was a surveyor, and he got some jobs over in Fiji, in Nandi and Suva, doing that kind of work. Well, tragedy hit, and my brother got very, very sick. Now, he was almost 10, and I was around about 4 years old at that stage. So I'd been living in Fiji from the age of 10 months old. So that was my life, that was a big part of our story of upbringing. So he got very, very sick, and it turned out that he had cancer, leukemia. So they flew back, they dropped everything, and they came back to New Zealand to get treatment. Now, back then, there wasn't a lot of great treatments available. These years now, with all the technology that we have, his likelihood of survival is definitely far greater than it was back then. My mum, she fought to be by his side, and back then they didn't have the same ways of understanding how important support was. So she would fight to just be able to sleep outside on the balcony of the hospital room to be with him during those times. And he passed away at the age of 10. So I was 4 and he was 10, and he passed away. And that spiraled my family into deep grief. And I sort of was caught up in this, I guess, tragedy story where there was my mum, her only son, suddenly ripped away from her. And that had a ripple effect on the bonding that I had with my family and how I was raised. And I was very, very lonely, and it caused me to feel very depressed and filled up with grief. And I think that was the beginning pathways of why I do what I do. Why I do what I do, because I understand how big grief can be to a family. I understand what it does on the inside through my own lived experience of feeling somehow broken, somehow things aren't right, and not being able to remedy it, not being able to fix it. Brendan couldn't come back. My family was changed forever at that point. Now, the specialists said to my parents, don't tell Meredith that she's adopted. It's best to wait until she's married and settle down with children. So that was the advice of the times. However, Destiny had another idea. And when I was on a class trip, I went to boarding school. I went on a class trip to the Wanganui library. And I was looking up birth, deaths, and marriages because both of my parents were originally from Wanganui. And there was this little card, said one chosen baby girl. Now, I didn't really read that properly, and it didn't dawn on me that that could mean something. So here I was, oblivious that I was adopted, reading this card and also seeing Brendan's name there and not saying he had been deceased. So I thought, well, I'll go to the librarian and let them know that he's now deceased in case someone wanted to research our family tree and that would be up to date. So I thought I was, trying to help out. And then also that my name wasn't there either on the records. So I started to talk to her, and the penny must have dropped in her mind about what was going on. She said, look, can you just sit down here for a moment? I'm going to go and find some information and I'll come back to you in a moment. She took a bit of time, but she came back with this birth notice. And she said, look, you're not the first person to find out this, but I think you're adopted. And this is why I think this. And she presented me with evidence. And it was like one chosen baby girl of Robin Adele McCarthy and Bernard Hewitt McCarthy on this date. And it was there in the paper that I'd been adopted by them. And my world at that point changed. I was in shock. My identity of who I thought I was completely went out the window, and I had to rethink my story. I had to kind of think, wow, there's a mother that I've never met before. That's my mother. There's flesh and blood that I've never met before. My father, I've never met my birth father. And maybe I've got siblings. Maybe I've got this other family out there that I don't know about. Yeah, that was earth-changing. Now, of all places to have found out that I was adopted, boarding school was amazing because there were many girls in that space that either had someone adopted into their family who were adopted themselves or knew an adoption story. And they all came up to me individually and shared because, of course, when there's only 160 odd girls in a school, news like that is like wildfire. Everyone finds out your business because it was a class trip, everyone was there, and it was like, oh, okay, yeah, Meredith just found out she was adopted. Earth-changing. So soon after that, my parents travelled down and we had a weekend together, and my mum and dad sat me down and explained the journey of all of the tragedies that my mum had gone through to finally adopt me and why they didn't tell me beforehand. And it was around that time when Brendan died, and the experts of the time suggested that wasn't a good idea to tell me until I was married, grown up with children. I thought that was very interesting. In hindsight, I would disagree with that advice, knowing what I know, but that's okay. It was huge to ask for my real birth certificate and to see my mother's name there. And then I started to do a search, and I wasn't successful for a number of years. And it wasn't until I had both of my children, actually, they were young. Jessica was still relatively a baby, and Marcus was a toddler. And I originally sort of thought, oh, maybe I'll never find her. And I gave it another go. And she had chosen to change her name. And through the deed poll, there was an address, and it was a New Zealand address. So I wrote a letter. And it actually ended up going to one of my half sisters. And she opened it, and she told her mum what had arrived, and that began a conversation. Soon after that, I met my sisters, my half sisters. I have 3 half sisters and also a half brother. The 3 half sisters were raised by my birth mum, and that was incredible to see people I had been, I guess, not raised with, but looking at their mannerisms, looking at their features, and going, wow, that's my blood family. It was quite an interesting thing. And to see my birth mum's picture for the first time. And soon after that, my birth mother surprised me at turning up on my doorstep. And yeah, history's made. We're still in touch. Not every adoption connection ends like that, by the way. And I understand it can be really tragic when a birth parent isn't wanting to go there with their child that they gave away for various reasons. And it can be quite a tough journey. And I think, though, for me and my birth mother, it was very healing for both of us to have that connection. And I nudged her to go and find her firstborn, because he was adopted out, and she did. And so I got to meet him as well, my half brother. Now, when we're looking at that idea of identity, for a very long time, I felt broken. I felt alone and misunderstood, and I couldn't always understand what was going on. And it spanned me into a lot of depression and a lot of suicidal thoughts and feeling hopeless. And also I had dyslexia too, and my parents really didn't understand that. And it wasn't until I connected with my birth family that I realized dyslexia was probably genetic. So that was also quite cathartic too, to know that it wasn't just me, that there was a reason why my brain was wired the way it was. And I was very, very similar to my birth mum, even though she didn't raise me. My beliefs, my humour, even my handwriting is like her, and it's quite strange. But I suddenly started to heal parts that I can't explain. With the story of identity, I think when our story of identity has been frayed through tragedy, it can affect our self-esteem, our feeling of place and space in the world. And so for a very long time, my mother that raised me, every time I'd go through a milestone, her grief would go, that's one thing Brendan will never get to do. And that's where her head was for a very long time. And I'm happy to say, and this is going to make me tear up actually, that my mum in recent times isn't very well. And this is the mum that raised me, right? And she's been able to apologise, which I must say has been a really lovely thing, to be able to bond properly, and for her to acknowledge what she did and how it was. But I also said to her, it was exactly how it needed to be, because all of those tragedies, if you like, have been the treasure of wisdom that's allowed me to be able to hold space for people who are going through their personal tragedy, because I understand. And I think my empathy grew, my levels of perseverance, my understanding that you can't get from a book. You can't read this. It needs to be something that you live through. Gets you ready to do this kind of work with people. And this is where I think therapists don't go on a straight line to becoming a therapist, especially a hypnotherapist. We all have our own personal story of why we turn up and do the work we do. I know this is a bit of a personal sharing today, but I think it's important sometimes to just share these things, and it gives a deeper understanding to showcase the positive outcome of the work that I do as a therapist. I'm here to help people not feel broken. I'm here to hold space and rally and plant those seeds of belief, no matter what tragedy you've journeyed through. That is not needing to define you and your worth. Okay? So you know you are worthy. You're worthy of love. You're worthy of respect. You're worthy to be here on this planet doing what you love. And one of the things that I learned is the power of internal dialogue. The thoughts that I think count because they either lift or lower how you feel vibrationally in the world. And as a hypnotherapist, this is what we do best, is we help people elevate how they feel in the world. If you can relate to my story in some way, I know it's not going to be your story, but if you can relate to the heart space of what goes on to cause a human being to want to help others, this is sometimes coming from a place where we've been there too. Okay? And we want people to understand there's life beyond that tragedy. There's life beyond that. So, on that note, if you're interested in becoming a clinical hypnotherapist and you're interested in doing the diploma course with me, check out the website nzach.ac.nz. And I'm passionate about this work. It's not just any old job. It's something that feels like a glove to me. It fits in so many good ways that I can't express through words alone. My heart, I still, every day, I get excited about coming to work and helping people not feel broken, to feel their whole self, to fill themselves up from the inside with the thoughts they think, becoming their own inner best friend. And that is the journey that I went through to survive what I did. And I promise you, hypnotherapy is the most amazing tool in the toolkit of breaking out of destructive patterns and living your best life. So thank you for coming along today on this journey of me sharing a little bit about me and being a sort of here to maybe consider a journey yourself in becoming a clinical hypnotherapist and learning those skills to help others. So look, get in touch if you want. I'll be back here another week from now. Ka kite. Enjoy.